My daughter, what are you doing? Don't leave me out here, please. Let me go back inside.
Mom, I'm come home today. I can't wait to see your face. And Zuri, thank you for taking care of my mother while I was away.
You're not staying in that house tonight. Sit out here and freeze if you must.
Mama, why are you out here alone in the cold? Tell me, who did this to you?
My son, I can't bear this cold. I'm freezing.
Before we continue with the story, let me ask you something. Tell me where you're watching from. Nigeria, the US, the UK, Kenya, South Africa, or anywhere else in the world. Because no matter our culture or language, we all understand one truth. There is no one more sacred than the mother who raised us from nothing, the mother who suffered so we could succeed, the mother who prayed when she had no money to give. And if you value that truth, if you believe in honoring the women who gave us life, then subscribe to this channel right now. Make sure every African Tales episode reaches you as a reminder that money can build a house, but only love and gratitude can make it a home. Now let's dive into the story of Kenechi, a man who had everything, but almost lost the one person who mattered most. Kenechi Eze had not always been a billionaire. 25 years ago, he was just a boy living in a small village outside Enugu. His father had died when he was only 7 years old, leaving Mama Nkiru alone to raise him. She was a petty trader who sold akara by the roadside every morning. She would wake up at 4 in the morning, grind beans by hand, and fry the akara over a smoky stove. Her hands were always scarred from the hot oil, her back always bent from carrying heavy loads. But she never complained. Every kobo she earned went toward Kenechi's school fees. She wore only 2 wrappers for years, refusing to buy new clothes for herself. When other women mocked her for her worn-out appearance, she would smile and say, "My son's education is my new wrapper." Kenechi remembered those days vividly. He remembered coming home from school to find his mother sitting by the kerosene lamp, counting coins with tired eyes. He remembered the nights when she went to bed hungry so he could eat. He remembered her prayers, long, fervent prayers where she would call his name over and over, asking God to make him great. And God answered. Kenechi earned a scholarship to study engineering at the University of Lagos. After graduation, he started a clean energy company that revolutionized solar power distribution across West Africa. Within 10 years, he was a multimillionaire. Within 15, he was a billionaire. His face appeared on magazine covers. He received international awards. He built a mansion in the heart of Abuja, a sprawling estate with marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and a swimming pool that glittered like a jewel. And the first thing he did when he moved into that mansion was bring his mother to live with him. "Mama," he said, taking her hand as they stood in the grand foyer, "you will never suffer again. Everything I have is because of you. This house is yours. You are the queen here." Tears streamed down Mama Nkiru's face as she looked around the mansion. She touched the walls as if she couldn't believe they were real. "My son," she whispered, "God has answered my prayers." But there was someone else living in that mansion, someone who did not share Kenechi's gratitude. Her name was Zuri. Zuri was Kenechi's wife, a woman he had married 3 years earlier. She was beautiful, educated, and sophisticated. She had grown up in wealth, attended the best schools in London, and was accustomed to a life of luxury. She loved designer clothes, expensive restaurants, and high society parties. She had married Kenechi for love, yes, but also because his success matched her ambitions, and she did not understand why an old village woman had to live in her home. At first, Zuri tried to be polite. She smiled at Mama Nkiru during dinners. She made small talk when Kenechi was around, but when Kenechi wasn't looking, her smile would fade. Her eyes would grow cold. She didn't like the way Mama Nkiru woke up early and began cooking traditional meals that filled the house with the smell of palm oil and pepper. She didn't like the way Mama Nkiru dressed in simple wrappers instead of modern clothes. She didn't like the way Mama Nkiru spoke Igbo instead of English when guests visited. Kenechi, Zuri said one evening as they lay in bed, don't you think your mother would be more comfortable in a smaller house? Maybe we could build her something nice nearby. Kenechi turned to look at his wife, confusion in his eyes. Why would she be more comfortable away from us? She's my mother, Zuri. This is her home. Zuri forced a smile. Of course. I just thought. Never mind. But the seed of resentment had been planted. As the months passed, Zuri's discomfort grew into irritation. She began making subtle comments. Does your mother have to cook so early? The smell wakes me up. Can you ask her to wear something more modern? My friends are coming over. Why does she sit in the living room all day? It's awkward when I have guests. Kenechi, busy with his expanding business empire, dismissed her complaints as minor adjustments. He traveled frequently, to London, to New York, to Dubai, attending conferences and closing deals. He trusted Zuri to take care of Mama Nkiru while he was away, and that was his first mistake. Because when Kenechi was gone, Zuri's true nature emerged. It started with small cruelties. Zuri would walk past Mama Nkiru without greeting her. She would ignore her when she spoke. She would change the TV channel while Mama was watching. She would complain loudly about how the house smelled of village food. Mama Nkiru, ever humble, tried to appease her. My daughter, she said gently one morning, I will cook outside if the smell bothers you. Zuri didn't even look at her. Do what you want, she said coldly. So Mama Nkiru began cooking in the small shed behind the mansion, a place that was meant for storage. She would wake up at dawn, before anyone else, and prepare her meals in that cramped, dusty space. She ate alone, away from the dining table, sitting on a small stool with her plate balanced on her knees. When Kenechi called from his business trips, Mama Nkiru would smile into the phone and say, I'm fine, my son. Don't worry about me. Focus on your work. She didn't want to burden him. She didn't want to cause trouble in his marriage, but Zuri's cruelty only escalated. One afternoon, Mama Nkiru prepared her famous ogbono soup, the same soup she used to sell in the village to pay for Kenechi's school fees. She brought a bowl to Zuri, who was sitting in the living room scrolling through her phone. My daughter, Mama Nkiru said softly, I made your favorite soup. Please, taste it. Zuri looked up, her face twisted with disgust. Favorite? I don't eat village food. She snatched the bowl from Mama's hands and threw it across the room. The soup splattered against the white marble floor, the thick liquid spreading like a stain. Don't ever bring that nonsense near me again, Zuri shouted. Mama Nkiru stood frozen, tears welling in her eyes. She slowly bent down and began cleaning the mess with her bare hands, her old body trembling as she wiped the floor. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm sorry, my daughter. Zuri turned back to her phone, unbothered. The weeks passed, and the cold season arrived in Abuja. It was unusual. This far south, snow was almost unheard of. But that November, a strange weather system brought freezing temperatures and light snowfall to the city. People stayed indoors, wrapping themselves in blankets and turning on heaters. But inside Kenechi's mansion, Mama Nkiru had no heater in her room. She shivered through the nights, pulling her thin wrapper tight around her body. Her cough grew worse. Her hands shook constantly from the cold. One evening, as the temperature dropped even further, Mama Nkiru approached Zuri in the living room. Zuri was sitting by the fireplace, wrapped in a cashmere blanket, watching a Korean drama on the large-screen TV. Zuri, my daughter, Mama Nkiru said quietly. Please, can I have some hot water? I'm very cold. Zuri didn't turn around. Go make it yourself. I'm not your maid. But my hands, they shake. I'm afraid I'll burn myself. Zuri finally turned, her eyes blazing with anger. You always have an excuse, always complaining. You want to be treated like a queen in this house? You're lucky I even let you stay here. Mama Nkiru's face crumpled. Please, I just need— Get out! Zuri screamed, standing up. Get out of my sight! You're suffocating me with your presence! Mama Nkiru stepped back, confused and hurt. Where should I go? I don't care. Just get away from me! Zuri grabbed Mama Nkiru's arm and pulled her toward the front door. Mama Nkiru tried to resist, her weak voice pleading. It's too cold outside. Please, my daughter. I'll go to my room. Please. But Zuri was beyond reason. She opened the door, and the freezing wind rushed in, along with a flurry of snow. Sit out there until you learn to respect me, Zuri shouted, pushing Mama Nkiru onto the front step. Please, Mama Nkiru cried, reaching for the door. Don't leave me out here! Zuri slammed the door in her face and locked it. Outside, the snow began to fall harder. Mama Nkiru banged weakly on the door, her voice barely audible over the wind. Please, I'm cold. Please. But inside, Zuri had turned the TV volume up. She poured herself a glass of wine and settled back into her warm spot by the fire. Mama Nkiru, abandoned and freezing, dragged herself to the gate. She sat down on the cold ground, her body trembling violently. She pulled her wrapper over her head, trying to shield herself from the snow. Her lips began to turn blue. Her fingers grew numb. She thought about her son. She thought about the little boy she had raised, the one she had sacrificed everything for. She wondered if he would ever know how much she loved him. God, she whispered into the darkness, please, let me see my son one more time. At that exact moment, hundreds of kilometers away, Kenechi Eze was sitting in a first-class seat on a flight back to Abuja. He had cut his business trip short. It was Thanksgiving week, and he wanted to surprise his mother. He had bought her gifts: a thick, warm sweater, a new wrapper made of the finest fabric, and a gold necklace that sparkled like stars. He smiled as he imagined her face when he walked through the door. She's going to be so happy, he thought. His driver was waiting for him at the airport. They loaded the gifts into the car and began the drive to the mansion. Kenechi chatted excitedly about his plans for Thanksgiving dinner. We'll have jollof rice, fried chicken, moi moi, everything Mama loves. And I want Zuri to sit with her at the head of the table. They need to bond more. The driver nodded but said nothing. As they approached the mansion, the driver suddenly slowed down. Sir, he said, his voice uncertain, there's someone at the gate. Kenechi looked up from his phone. At the gate? At this hour? The headlights illuminated a figure slumped on the ground, covered in snow. Kenechi's heart stopped. Stop the car! He shouted. The car screeched to a halt. Kenechi threw open the door and ran toward the figure, his expensive shoes slipping on the icy ground. And then he saw her, his mother, Mama Nkiru, lying in the snow, her lips blue, her eyes barely open. Mama! Kenechi screamed, falling to his knees beside her. He lifted her into his arms. Her body was ice cold, her skin pale and lifeless. Mama, who did this to you? Who left you out here? Mama Nkiru's eyes fluttered open. She looked at her son, tears freezing on her cheeks. Son, she whispered, I'm so cold. I'm here, Mama. I'm here. You're going to be okay. He carried her toward the house, shouting at his driver to call an ambulance. He banged on the front door with his foot. Open this door! Now! Inside, Zuri heard the commotion. She quickly turned off the TV and ran to the door, smoothing her hair and fixing her expression into one of concern. She opened the door, her eyes widening in fake shock. Kenechi, you're home early! What? Oh my God! What happened to Mama? Kenechi pushed past her, carrying his mother to the living room. He laid her gently on the couch and wrapped her in every blanket he could find. What happened? He demanded, turning to Zuri. Why was my mother outside in the snow? Zuri's face was the picture of innocence. I don't know. She said she wanted fresh air earlier. I didn't know she stayed out so long. I fell asleep. Fresh air. Kenichi's voice was shaking with fury. In this weather? You expect me to believe that? I swear, Kenichi, I didn't know she was still outside. You know how stubborn she can be. The ambulance arrived minutes later. The paramedics examined Mama Nkiru, their faces grave. She's hypothermic, one of them said. Another hour out there, and she might not have made it. Kenichi felt his world tilt. He looked at his mother's frail body, at her blue lips, at her trembling hands. And then he looked at Zuri. Something in her eyes didn't match her words. There was no real concern there, no real fear, just calculation. I want the truth, Kenichi said quietly, and I want it now. Zuri's mask slipped for just a moment. I told you the truth. You're lying. I'm not. Then why? Kenichi interrupted, his voice rising. Why didn't you go check on her? Why didn't you bring her inside when you saw it was snowing? Why was the door locked from the inside? Zuri's face paled. I didn't realize. Stop lying, Kenichi roared. The paramedics finished stabilizing Mama Nkiru and loaded her into the ambulance. Kenichi rode with her to the hospital, leaving Zuri standing alone in the living room. At the hospital, Mama Nkiru was rushed into intensive care. Kenichi paced the hallway, his mind racing. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. His mother wouldn't just go outside in the snow. She was old, but she wasn't foolish. And Zuri's explanation didn't make sense. After an hour, the doctor emerged. She's stable now, the doctor said, but she was very close to death. If you had arrived even 30 minutes later. He didn't finish the sentence. Kenichi thanked him and sat down in the waiting area, his head in his hands. His phone rang. It was Zuri. Kenichi, I'm so sorry. I should have checked on her. I feel terrible. We'll talk when I get home, Kenichi said coldly, and hung up. He stayed at the hospital until dawn, sitting by his mother's bedside as she slept. When the sun rose, he finally drove back to the mansion. The house was quiet. Zuri was in the bedroom, pretending to sleep. Kenichi went to his study and opened his laptop. The mansion had security cameras installed throughout, cameras he had put in for safety but rarely checked. He pulled up the footage from the previous night, and what he saw made his blood run cold. The video showed everything. It showed Mama Nkiru approaching Zuri in the living room, asking for hot water. It showed Zuri screaming at her, grabbing her arm, dragging her to the door. It showed Mama Nkiru begging, pleading, crying. It showed Zuri pushing her outside and locking the door. It showed Mama Nkiru banging on the door, her voice barely audible. Please, don't leave me out here. I'm cold. And it showed Zuri turning up the TV volume and pouring herself wine. Kenichi watched in disbelief. His hands shook, his vision blurred with tears. He went back further in the footage. Days, weeks, months. He saw everything. The insults, the thrown soup, the kitchen shed, the lonely meals, the cruel words. Every humiliation his mother had endured while he was away, building his empire, trusting his wife to care for the woman who had given him everything. He had failed her. Kenichi stood up slowly. He walked to the bedroom and opened the door. Zuri sat up, rubbing her eyes. Kenichi, is Mama okay? Kenichi didn't answer. He walked to the closet and pulled out a suitcase. What are you doing? Zuri asked, her voice nervous. Pack your things, Kenichi said quietly. What? Why? Because you're leaving. Zuri's face went pale. Kenichi, what are you talking about? I saw the cameras, Zuri. I saw everything. The color drained completely from Zuri's face. I can explain. Explain what? Kenichi's voice was shaking with rage. Explain how you tortured my mother for months. Explain how you threw her outside to freeze to death. I didn't mean... Get out! Kenichi roared. Get out of my house! Now! Kenechi, please! He grabbed her arm and pulled her toward the door. Zuri struggled, crying, begging. I'm sorry. I made a mistake. Please don't do this. Kenechi opened the front door. The morning air was still cold. Snow covered the ground. You want to know what cold feels like, Kenechi said, his voice like ice. You want to know what my mother felt. He pushed Zuri outside. Don't leave me out here, Zuri screamed, echoing the words Mama Nkiru had said the night before. Kenechi slammed the door and locked it. Feel what she felt, he shouted through the door. Then maybe you'll understand. Zuri pounded on the door, crying and begging, but Kenechi walked away. He went back to his study and sat down, his head in his hands, tears streaming down his face. Outside, Zuri stood in the cold, shivering. She was wearing only a silk nightgown. The snow soaked through the thin fabric. She wrapped her arms around herself, her teeth chattering. She banged on the door again. Kenechi, please, I'm sorry, let me in. But there was no answer. She looked around. The street was empty. No one was awake yet. She tried calling a taxi on her phone, but her hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold it. Finally, a taxi arrived. But when the driver saw her, barefoot, in a nightgown, shivering, he refused to take her. I don't pick up drunk women, he said, and drove away. Zuri wandered the streets of Abuja, cold and lost. People stared at her. Some laughed. Some looked away in disgust. Is that woman crazy? She heard someone say. The time night fell again. Zuri found herself under a fuel station shade, huddled against the cold. Her feet were bleeding. Her nightgown was filthy. She had never felt so alone, so helpless, so humiliated. And in that moment, she finally understood. This was what Mama Nkiru had felt. This was the pain she had inflicted. Zuri broke down and cried. Back at the hospital, Mama Nkiru slowly regained her strength. Kenechi stayed by her side, holding her hand, apologizing over and over. I'm so sorry, Mama. I should have protected you. I should have seen what was happening. Mama Nkiru smiled weakly. My son, don't blame yourself. You gave me a home. You gave me comfort. That is enough. No, Mama, it's not enough. I failed you. You didn't fail me. You came back. God brought you back in time. Kenechi buried his face in her hands and wept. 3 days passed. Mama Nkiru was discharged from the hospital. Kenechi brought her home and made sure her room had the best heater, the softest bed, the warmest blankets. Zuri hadn't returned, but on the 4th morning, as Kenechi was preparing breakfast for his mother, he heard a knock on the door. He opened it to find Zuri standing there, barely recognizable. Her face was gaunt. Her eyes were hollow. Her clothes were torn and dirty. Kenechi, she whispered, please, let me in. No, please, I'm begging you. I'm sorry. I was wrong. I was cruel. I was wicked. Please forgive me. You almost killed my mother. I know, and I'll live with that guilt forever. But please, give me a chance to make it right. There's no making it right. Zuri fell to her knees, sobbing. Then let me die here. Let me die in the cold like I tried to do to her. Kenechi stared at her, his heart torn between rage and pity. And then he heard a voice behind him. Let her in. He turned to see Mama Nkiru standing there, wrapped in a thick shawl. Mama, no, she doesn't deserve. Let her in, my son. Kenechi stepped aside. Mama Nkiru walked slowly to the door and looked down at Zuri. Stand up, child, Mama Nkiru said gently. Zuri looked up, tears streaming down her face. I don't deserve your kindness. No, you don't. But mercy isn't about what we deserve, it's about what we need. Mama Nkiru reached down and helped Zuri to her feet. Come inside, you're freezing. Zuri collapsed into Mama Nkiru's arms, sobbing uncontrollably. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I know, my daughter. I know. Over the following weeks, something remarkable happened. Zuri didn't leave. She stayed in the guest room, and every day she worked to earn Mama Nkiru's forgiveness. She cooked meals under Mama's guidance, learning the recipes she had once despised. She cleaned the house without complaint. She sat with Mama in the evenings, listening to stories of the village, of the struggles, of the sacrifices. And slowly, painfully, she began to change. Thanksgiving arrived. Kenechi decided to host a dinner, not a grand party, but an intimate meal with close friends and neighbors. Mama Nkiru sat at the head of the table, dressed in the beautiful new wrapper Kenechi had bought her. Zuri sat beside her, wearing a simple dress, her eyes downcast but focused. As the guests arrived, they were shocked to see Zuri serving food humbly, filling plates, fetching water, acting not like the lady of the house, but like a servant. "Zuri," one of the guests whispered, "what happened to you?" Zuri smiled sadly. "I learned what it means to be human." Kenechi stood and raised his glass. "I want to thank everyone for coming today," he began. "Thanksgiving is about gratitude, and I've learned that no amount of money, no amount of success means anything if we forget where we came from." He looked at his mother. "This woman," he said, his voice breaking, "sacrificed everything for me. She went hungry so I could eat. She wore rags so I could have school uniforms. She prayed when she had nothing else to give, and I almost lost her because I was too blind to see what was happening in my own home." The room was silent. "I also want to say something about my wife," Kenechi continued, looking at Zuri. "She made terrible mistakes. She was cruel, heartless, and wicked. But my mother, in her infinite grace, chose to forgive her. And I've learned that forgiveness doesn't erase the past, but it gives us a chance to build a better future." He raised his glass higher. "To mothers, to forgiveness, to second chances, to mothers," the guests echoed. Mama Nkiru smiled, tears glistening in her eyes. After dinner, as the guests left and the house grew quiet, Zuri sat beside Mama Nkiru on the couch. "Mama," she said softly, "I know I can never undo what I did, but I promise you for the rest of my life, I will honor you. I will protect you. I will love you the way a daughter should." Mama Nkiru took Zuri's hand. "That's all I ever wanted, my child. Not luxury, not comfort, just love." Zuri laid her head on Mama's shoulder and wept. Kenechi watched from the doorway, his heart full of both sorrow and hope. He had almost lost everything, but by God's grace, he had been given a second chance, and he would never take it for granted again. A mansion, no matter how grand, is just walls and floors, but a home, a true home, is built with love, respect, and gratitude. And those are the things that no amount of money can buy. If you believe that no mother deserves coldness, if you believe that the woman who raised you deserves your honor and protection, then hit subscribe right now. Because only people who enjoy wickedness like Zuri before her repentance will watch this whole story and leave without subscribing. Let this story be a reminder that wealth can build a house, but only love and gratitude can make it a home. Thank you for watching. And remember, no matter where you are in the world, honor your mother.